back. It's another new year, and we are back with another session of On the Trail in Search of Living Legends. This is going to be Season 5, Episode 5. Tonight, we have, of course, Mr. Nick Valente, my partner. Nick, how's it going, brother?
Doing good, Jay. How about you?
Can't complain. Can't complain.
Yeah.
And then we've got the living legend himself up in the left-hand corner. We haven't seen in a long time, Mr. Gary Spikes, the Almighty. What's going on, Gary?
Not much, man. Not much. Good to be back in the saddle for a couple of requested.
Yeah,
videos.
check out that mohawk he has there.
Oh yeah,
love it. Love it. And tonight we are very fortunate to have a man I respect, big fan of, does some good work. He's a wealth of knowledge, Mr. Shane Carpenter. Shane, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing good. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's an honor, man. It's an honor
to have you here, Shane.
So Shane, before we roll into things, you want to rewind back many moons ago and tell us how you got into this whole field we love and hate so much?
Sure. All this really started when I was 10, back in 1984. I was on my uncle's property. My aunt and uncle watched me. They were kind of like my babysitters, during the summer while my parents were at work. So I was out there quite a bit during the summers, and he had I wouldn't call it a farm, they didn't have cows on their property. There was cows next door, but they had a little chicken house and stuff, and but quite a bit of property. And they had this dog named Sam, a great dog. He was part pinscher and part black lab. Looked just like a Doberman pinscher, but thicker and bigger,
Yeah.
And anyway, he loved chasing deer, so he would disappear off into the woods a lot. A few times he pulled back a doe one time, pulled back a couple fawns, to the house. And anyway, he disappeared one day, and my uncle went out and whistled. I mean, my uncle can whistle super loud, so he gives this whistle out, and usually Sam he'd show back up within 15-20 minutes. And that day it didn't happen, so he said, "Hey Shane, why don't you go out to the wood line and holler for Sam." So his house, there was a field directly behind the house. It was completely fenced in with barbed wire fencing, and there was a pond out in the middle. So I crossed the field, went into the wood line a little ways, and started hollering for Sam, and wasn't getting any responses or anything. And so I kind of started walking my way eastward, and staying in the wood line. And as I got down a ways, I started getting this just horrible feeling. I don't even know how to describe it. At the time, it's not even like the sense of being watched. It was just this overwhelming feeling that something was near me. And at a point, I kind of honed into this one particular tree. And as I sat there staring at this tree, it's almost like I knew something was behind it or there, And then this thing stepped out from behind the tree, and it stood there and stared at me for 10-15 seconds. We just gazed at each other. No expression on its face or anything. It was, at the time, I didn't know what I was looking at. I'd never heard of Sasquatch or Bigfoot. I didn't watch a lot of TV as a child. I still don't watch TV. So I wasn't really exposed. I hadn't been exposed to it yet. And during that 15 seconds, of course, it felt like, forever. It was like it all happened in slow motion, and like I said, we just gazed at each other. It turned around and walked away, walked up this hill, crested the hill. And as soon as it disappeared over the hill, that's like when the anxiety and fear kicked in. And I immediately turned around, took off running back to the house. I got about halfway across the field. At this point, I'm like crying and, breathing hard, adrenaline, all that stuff, I'm reacting emotionally at this point, as a child. And as I got about halfway across the field, I could see that my dad's vehicle was there. He'd shown up while I was out there. So I start yelling, screaming for my dad as I'm running across the field. And he heard me, met me out back. And long story short, he consoled me, calmed me down. And I told him what had happened. And he basically tried to convince me that had spooked myself. I was seeing shadows and, so that was my first encounter. Nothing happened the rest of my life until 2013. And in 2013, this all happened on July 1st, 2013. So the day before, I had just decided that I wanted to get my family out in the woods, go for a hike. I didn't want to just go hit, normal trails and stuff where a lot of people were and whatnot. I wanted to be kind of secluded. And so I got on Google Earth and found a place. We decided to go. We took off the next morning. We had hiked out 1.5 miles, maybe 2 miles. I don't know. We get to a point and the boys are out, all 3 of my boys, and they had a friend with them too. So I had four kids with me. They were kind of out ahead of us on the trail, just having fun and being loud. And all of a sudden I get this feeling, and I even recognized it, in like, not really fear, but kind of like when you feel like your stomach comes up into your throat, like just dread. You're dreading the situation immediately. Something is awry. So I went to my left and stepped off the trail and went into the woods 20 or 30 feet, 40 feet, and just started gazing through the woods. And as I looked off, let's see, it would be to the northeast, there was a thicket and a bunch of down trees and stuff that all this thicket had kind of grown into. And there were 3 heads and a possible 4th sticking up. 2 of them I could see, I could see the brow ridge and the eyes, and like just the very ridge of the nose.
Right.
And I pulled my phone out, snapped a couple pictures, and immediately went back out to the trail. I told my wife that we were going to turn around and leave. And when I went back out to the trail, I didn't want to, freak the kids out, or I didn't want them to know that anything was going on. They were having a blast, and I wanted them to continue that. So my wife could see that something was wrong. And luckily in the moment, she just went with it. Right. So trusting me, I guess. And so I hollered at the kids. We turned around, we hiked out, stopped at there's a creek that we had crossed. We stopped there and took a couple pictures. And later on, I saw that there was, on the other side of the creek where we came out, on each side of this one tree were 2 heads, and watching us, actually. And didn't see that at the time, but we hiked on out, got home, and as soon as we got home and weren't around the kids, my wife asked me, "Hey, what was that all about?" So I had to, I just kind of had to take a step back, and first and foremost, I had to admit to my wife and tell my wife what had happened to me when I was 10 years old. I'd never expressed that to her,
Yeah.
In my adult life, I never even talked about it or thought about it. I just put it lock and key in the back of my mind at some point, in my childhood. But so I had to tell her about that. And then I had to explain to her what had just happened, and that I'd just possibly seen 4 more of these things. And the hardest part of everything that I've done within this realm of Bigfoot and Sasquatch, that was probably the hardest thing. It was scary because I had to tell the woman that I loved and that I trusted the most these crazy stories, right? These 2 crazy things, and hope that she believed me and trusted me. And luckily she did. So I started thinking about it, like all night long. I just thought about it and thought about it. So I decided I had to go out and face this and see what these things were. So literally the next morning at sunrise, I was back out there and I hiked out to where that had happened and started looking around. And that turned into, that was July 2nd, turned into July 3rd, turned into July 4th. Like literally July 4th, I was racing home at sundown, and I still had to stop and get fireworks to, you know, enjoy July 4th with my kids. I like immediately was just ate up with it, you know, almost obsessively for a little while. Some of it was probably, you know, looking back on it, was overcoming what had happened to me as a childhood and like facing that fear, maybe, you know. But the other side of it was the inquisitive side of me. And like Gary will tell you, we've had lots of discussions. I'm an information junkie. And so at that point in my life, you know, it was interesting to me. It was a little more interesting than being fearful. So I just went headfirst into it, and I, for lack of a better word, researched that group for several years and was getting interaction from 2 juveniles. I had seen 4 different others out there. One of them I haven't talked about much because I only got to see it one time, but the rest of them I got to see on a few occasions. So yeah, I could talk about that whole situation for days, you know, hours and hours. We could talk about that situation, but it's kind of long past at this point. And to make a long story short, my patience had dissolved somewhat, and I ended up taking somebody out because I needed somebody else to see this so that I could talk about it, right? So like at least have one person to discuss it with. Sure. And I took somebody out. He got to see them. He was, and I'll say this too, he was a pro mixed martial arts fighter. I was his coach, and he was also ex-military, you know, so he seemed like a prime candidate. You know, as a ex mixed martial arts fighter yourself, Jeremy, like, you know how you learn to control your adrenaline. You learn to run that level line, not get too excited or too low, and you know, in crazy moments. So that's I thought that would be some good qualities in that I would take him out and he would see these and he would want to become my research partner. And it actually worked out just the opposite. I got him 20, 30 feet from the young female. And when he realized what he was looking at, it turned, it popped its head out of a thicket. He looked at it, looked back at me, looked back over that direction, and she had turned and took off out of the thicket on all 4s, and then stood, you know, and went into a standing run. And then at that point, he like basically went into like a panic attack. And
oh wow!
And so I had to hike him out immediately, and that was the last time I had. That was the end of it. That was the last time I had gotten any interaction. Everything just slowly stopped after that. I was still finding their tracks occasionally, but it seemed like over time I found them less and less, and I was having to go to particular areas to find their tracks and any sign of them. And then it got to a point where I would go out there and not find anything, and it seemed as though they quit coming and kind of occupying that area to an extent.
Yeah, Shane, and, what state were you in when you?
This is Southwest Missouri.
Southwest Missouri. About how tall would you say the Sasquatch were?
I can't put a good number on all of them. The adult female, I'd gotten a picture of her and seen her standing in a tree line about 60 yards from me. And there's a limb above her head. And when I came back through after that had happened, I went to where she was and measured up to that limb, and that limb was just under 7 foot. So yeah, she was in the upper 6s. I had a pretty good estimate of the juveniles, the 2 juveniles. The male, the young male, and I don't know if he was a juvenile or not, actually, because he looked completely different than the others. But he was 5.5, maybe 6 foot tall. When I seen him, he was moving fairly fast, so he could have been in a kind of lowered position.
Right.
And the young female, the last time I seen her, I would say she was 5 foot tall.
Any older males?
Yeah, there was an adult male. I only got to see him 2 times out of the whole few years I was there researching. I caught him in a blind one time, and he was sitting, so I couldn't get an estimate on his height. Another time I caught him behind a thicket, and I went behind that thicket later, and the top of that thicket was 7.5 to 8 foot tall, and he was looking over it. But I also don't know where he was standing in comparison to the back of the thicket, because it went uphill.
Right.
So he could have been standing 10 foot from the back of it, and that would have, he could have been, say, 7 foot tall, and if he went back 10 foot, that would have put his head above it. Right. So I don't know for sure, but I can tell you that he was built like a bodybuilder.
Oh.
And he looked very, other than his nose, he looked like a gorilla almost.
Wow.
Not in his stature as far as standing. I never got to see his body while he was standing, but his whole upper body was like built like a gorilla somewhat, as far as the muscularity of it.
So at any time, any threatening ideas in your mind that they were threatening you, or anything
Never.
like that?
Never, not once.
Any gifting ever go on between you and them?
Baiting? Yes.
Baiting. You want to call it baiting? All right.
Yes, I baited that group, and my present situation that I'm in, I baited there also for 3 years and then stopped. And I am now baiting again because the situation has changed a little bit.
You ever bait them with a Snickers bar or anything like that?
That's what I'm using presently.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what would happen to the juveniles once they're on sugar.
This is the bite-sized Snickers are a newer thing. But I have in the past, when I first started back in 2013, I was really interested in what they would take and what they wouldn't. So I left. Every time I would go, I'd bring different things, and the only things they never took were oranges and squash.
Healthy stuff.
And that's consistent in both the areas. In the 400, it's the same way. They won't take oranges or squash.
Oh, wow.
I have my ideas why they didn't take that. What do you think? What is your ideas on it?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I haven't to be honest, I haven't contemplated too much into it. But there's another situation that I'm kind of involved in, and the same thing has happened there. They haven't tried the squash yet, but they tried the oranges, and it was the same deal. They just left them, wouldn't take them. But I got to a point, and I started leaving granola bars and protein bars that were also chocolate protein bars. And I set my bait stations up to where it's kind of a process that takes a bit, but eventually it's a closed system, so that you absolutely know that there's only 2 things that could have gotten into it: a person or a Sasquatch. If any animals, the only animal that would be able to get into it would be a bear, and it would leave signs. You would see signs.
Yeah. Or a raccoon. Yeah.
No, a raccoon couldn't have gotten into it.
Really?
No.
Those guys are smart. They can open up a can of peanut butter, for crying out loud.
Right.
Woo.
Well, both of my bait stations, the way that I work them, eventually the system is closed up when they're done also. It's just the way it's worked out both times. They will open it up, take the items out, take them out of the wrappers, and put the wrappers back in and close it back up. And that happened. It happened at both sites, actually, which was, to me, kind of crazy. I had 2 people in from St. Louis this weekend actually, and I'll go ahead and tell it because they're gonna. I told them they could post about it and show pictures and stuff, but I hadn't been to that location in 2 years, 2.5 years maybe, and I took them out there and we checked my bait station, and the wrappers from 2 years ago were still in it, which was kind of wild.
Yeah.
It shows me that they're abiding by the forestry rules, don't litter, pick
Yeah,
up after
right.
yourself.
I don't know if it's that necessarily, or if they were putting it back, to almost like a, saying, hey, thank you, leave more of these,
Oh, yeah, that's probably what they were doing. This is what
Yeah.
we want. Don't leave.
Right. Yeah.
Don't leave grapefruits and lemons either. Yeah.
Back on that
Right.
that orange thing, Shane. Did you
Yeah.
actually have evidence where they had actually tried to eat them, or did they just leave them alone?
Nope. Wouldn't touch them.
Wouldn't
They
touch
stayed
them.
exactly where they were. Yeah. And at one point I even, there was a small tree next to my bait station at that point, and it had a nub on it. And I took an orange another time and shoved the nub through it so that some juices would leak out and they could smell it, and just to maybe entice them to want to take it.
Right.
And they still didn't. It sat there on that nub for a month.
Wow.
Could it be the color?
I don't know, maybe.
Because squash is a bright color, and the orange is a bright color, and in a lot of nature, like a lot of your poisonous snakes and insects and stuff are brightly colored. That's
Right,
interesting.
Yeah,
It-
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Or you think it could have had something to do with the acidic smell of the oranges?
Who knows? Possibly,
But a squash
maybe
is-
they may not.
Squash
may
isn't
not
though,
like-
yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right, Gary.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I didn't think about that. That's a good point. That's real good.
Yeah, it's really hard to say, man. It's really
Even-
hard to say.
even in a biological sense, you figure an orange is very sweet, and even for a for calorie intake, a squash would be good too. But I just
Mhm.
who knows? We don't know how these things think yet.
Nope.
Well, here's a third thing that I always fail to mention. This is another thing that they didn't touch, and this is just in the 400. I did not try this in my old area, but in the 400, I had several people, hey, you need to try garlic. You need to try garlic. So I took whole garlic, and I left out probably, I don't remember exactly how many, 10 to 15. And I didn't even put them inside the bait station. I put them all around the bait station, and they didn't touch those either. And I had
That's
people
interesting.
I had people reach out to me, hey, they love these. You need to try this. They would not touch it.
Well, it's said that they love them. That was a famous storyline from
Right.
I'm that's interesting too, though, because garlic repels a lot of different natural animals. Like my dog,
Right.
they'll run the other
right.
way from garlic.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And that all kind of led that situation when it kind of dissolved. I was really oh man, I was like not depressed, but I was really bummed out because I had several years involved in that place, and then to have it I made a mistake is what happened, right? I chased it, and like my whole presentation to them out there that I'd set up was like just being keeping the whole situation to where they always, like, I had hikes that I did, off trail hikes, and I stuck to those, right? So every time I would go out, I would do that same hike and over and over and over. And basically it's about being predictable, right? That's the main thing that I focused on, was being predictable. No matter what happened, I had to stay calm and collected and laugh the moment off and show that no matter what happened, I would be like that and be very predictable. And then I suddenly wasn't. I chased one. So I blamed that on myself. And when the 400 situation got opened up to me, for me, it was an opportunity to go into another situation, do the same thing, but kind of hone the way that I was doing things, and get past the point where I'd made that mistake, So the 400 got opened up to me, and very first day I was there, I had a sighting, and the guy that took me out into the property had his first sighting while he was with me that day. And from that point forward, it's just been crazy.
You and I had a conversation, Shane, on the phone one time, and we were talking about eye shine. And I don't know if you want me to go into this or not, but our opinions on the eye shine were, the same. A lot of people used to say back in the day, you got to shine a light in their eye to get eye shine back. I disagree with that. And I remember when you and I were on the phone, you told me a little story about how you watched one's eyes change color. Do you mind getting into that, or is that something you don't want to hit on?
Yeah, I'm surprised that you remember that conversation. And
it was like 3 years ago.
It's something I haven't really talked about, honestly, and so I haven't been asked about it. So I will tell that story. I brought somebody down from Colorado to join me on an excursion in my old area, and when she came in, I also had another feller that I invited out. So there were 3 of us, and me and her were down a trail from our camp, and there was 2 sets of eyes looking at us, and the eyes seemed to be like glowing white, like almost like they were lit up, right? At first, I'm trying to figure out what I'm seeing, and is there 4 people out there with flashlights, 2 people out there holding 2 flashlights, Of course I kind of knew what was going on and what it was, but where it got crazy, and I hadn't seen this before, didn't believe it to be true, right? And I called the 3rd guy who was down the trail. I called him to us. Hey, you have to come see this. And as he walked up and got closer to us, the eyes faded from white to red, and then went out and then disappeared. Wow. And he steps up to look, and they're gone. There's no eye shine, or whatever you want to call it.
Wow.
So that was it. After that, I started looking into it and researching a little bit. And what I ended up finding was that the military is trying to use chlorophyll and create an eye drop using chlorophyll that will allow people to have night vision, basically.
Right.
And one of the ways that they discovered this was through some deep sea fish, and these fish can light their eyes up. And so with that thought, I started looking into chlorophyll, and where it can be ingested naturally, or thinking about if these things could maybe rub this substance in their eyes, or I went down a little rabbit hole trying to figure it out, and in the end I came to no conclusions. That I haven't seen it since either. And the crazy part of the story is the lady that was with me asked them to show me their eyes. She had never been there, and she out loud asked them to show their eyes to me, and it happened. Wow. And it was one of those mind-boggling moments for sure.
Sure. That's wild.
It's crazy that you remember that conversation. Yeah. I forgot that we had that conversation.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. It was almost 4 years ago now.
Well, being with you as long as I have, Shane, and we started this thing a while back, I have to get on something that I've always thought was one of the most important things that you had had gotten into at the 400, now that you've entered into the 400. And this will be right down Nick's alley, because this is direct forensic study and forensic data. What have you come? I haven't talked to you in a while. What have you come on the growth rate of the juvenile tracks that you've been finding every year?
Okay, so the situation in the 400 has changed. The 2 juveniles that were there aren't there anymore.
Really?
So yeah, they're no longer there. The same 2 adults are still there. Let me backstep. The adult female is still there. The adult male, I'm about 90% sure that he's still there. I haven't found really good tracks, just compressions. So I can't say positively, but there's 2 other juveniles there right now. And so I'm actually getting to start that process over, but instead of starting at 9-inch tracks, we now have 6-inch tracks.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm going to get to start a little earlier with those 2 that were there originally. We were seeing about 1 inch to 1.25 inches growth a year. And recently finding the mother's tracks, hers were on that same trajectory also when they were 12 inches, and they're 14 inches now, and they should be a little bigger than that if they were sticking to the growth rate. So the growth in her feet are slowing. It seems as though her feet are slowing down as far as the growth. But yeah, about 1 inch to 1.25 inches a year is what we were seeing in those 2 juveniles in particular.
And that would even make sense on a biological pattern, as any animal, a juvenile, as they get older, the feet growth would stop. But at least us being able to have a rough estimate, if that holds true, if we can get more evidence of that in the future, then you could almost, how would we say, guesstimate a individual's age by the size of their foot.
Yeah,
like we do with bears.
Here's something interesting I'll throw at you guys real quick. I haven't discussed this with anybody other than Randy. Back 2.5, 3 years ago, we had the inclination that the mother may have been carrying around a very young one. And then I found a 6-inch track that was in the edge of the water. And we weren't able to cast it, but we made note of it. And so with the time frame that we're seeing, we now have a set of tracks that are 9.5 inches. We believe that was the one that had 6-inch tracks back then. And we have a new set of 6-inch tracks now.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So here's where it gets interesting is in my old research area, when I first started really tracking hard out there, there was a set of 6-inch tracks and a set of 10-inch tracks, right? That was the next step up. Out in the 400, we had the other 2 juvies there, and then the 6-inch track, and the next one was a 9.25. Now we have a 6-inch track and a 9.5-inch track. Last weekend, I was called to a place 40 minutes northwest of me, and 3 sets of tracks in a mud flat, 6-inch, 10-inch, and there was a set of 11.5-inch. But what I'm seeing, we've seen it once in my old area, we've seen it twice now in the 400, and now at this other spot that I just recently went to, when we find a 9 to 10-inch track, there's a 6-inch track. Right? So does this show possibly that it's a commonality within them, whatever they are, that they have children on a schedule? You get where I'm going?
Yep.
On a biological
4 times now we've found 6-inch tracks and 9 to 10-inch tracks. So it seems to say that there's a time frame there that's almost kind of set in stone for breeding.
Absolutely.
Whether it be the age of the youngest juvie, say it hits a certain age, and then they're okay to breed again.
Let me ask you
Right.
this: if that's the case, what was the size of the individuals that has left the 400?
Their feet were, and see, and that's where this is where it gets a little convoluted. All of these places. So this last place I told you there was an 11.5-inch track.
Yeah.
So it went from 10 to 11.5 inch. Okay. The two juvies out there that I was tracking and casting constantly.
Yeah.
One of them, when hers were 10 1/4, the young juvies were about, the young males was about 9. So 4 different times we have 6-inch, 9 to 10-inch, and then 11.5 to 12, or 11 to 12. So that first set, the between the 6 and the 9 to 10-inch.
Yeah.
Right. I'm thinking along those lines and going, wow, does this show that there's a specific time frame? Right. But then you look at the next set and they're only inch to 1.5 inch differentiation. Right. So it doesn't fall in line, but it's the same situation basically in all 3 places. 6 to 9 to 10 to 11 to 11.5.
Wow.
So
just something interesting that I recently kind of put together.
Once again, I have to ask, what was the size of the tracks that you lost? That left.
Those were the last time I casted them. Was 9 1/4 and 10.5.
I'm wondering if a young female gets to a certain age, just like in some primate cultures, that they usually run the males off, but some primate cultures, when a young female gets to a breeding age, they go to another genome population, or
Right.
something like that. It's just a theory, it's just a thought, but that might explain why. But that wouldn't explain why both of them left, unless they was tied together.
Right, and that's where I always assumed throughout this that they were brother and sister.
Yeah.
In my old area, it was just the opposite. The young male was bigger than the young female, so we assumed the age difference was there. But
that's interesting.
I mean, it could be a possibility where the young male was brought in and set up for her, and when they're not on the property, they may be off getting another area ready for them as a couple. Like, who knows? You know what I mean? Like, we just don't know. We don't know.
We don't know the sociological structure of these guys. That's
right.
That's one of the biggest things that intrigued me. Nick, I don't know how long you've followed Shane and the 400, but that always got me. And I've always told you for years, Shane, that you had something very special here, because you have something with the longevity of being able to do legitimate observation, because you're interacting with these over a period of time, and you're able to see the behavioral patterns and as of now the biological patterns.
Right. It is a special place for sure. It's like a little gold nugget, It's in Missouri that shouldn't be in Missouri.
Shane, any mind speak between them and you at any time?
Nope.
No,
never experienced it.
No communication that they're trying to say anything.
Nope. And when I was younger, I actually, studied telepathy and got into it and experimented with it. In my old area, when I first got into this, I'm reading other people's stories and whatnot. So I thought I'd go out and try it. I went out and meditated for 2 hours on the edge of a cliff, trying to open myself up to that if it was possible, and nothing. So I haven't experienced anything like that.
You ever experienced any type of aggression, Shane?
No. I've experienced things that other people would describe as aggression, like rocks being thrown around me and stuff. But that's people's fear speaking. They don't know why they're throwing the rocks,
right?
And the fear takes over, and that was aggressive. I don't necessarily see things like that, so.
Yeah.
Did they ever leave you any gifts?
Yes. Yeah. There were times when things would be left. Like the most profound thing for me actually was in my old area, and I had set the base station, and when I stood up, there was like a swarm of gnats around me.
Right.
And, I stood up and I was waving my arms and spinning around, trying to get these things, get the swarm off of my head, basically. And I finished that up and then went and did the rest of my thing, my normal, hike. And then as I passed back through, I glanced down at the base station and everything was gone. And there was a rock with some green stuff under it. I went down and it was a pile of mint leaves. And in the moment, I sat there thinking mint leaves, mint leaves, mint leaves, and then it kind of hit me before I left the base station. I was swiping all these bugs away from me, and
keep the bugs
so
away with the mint.
yeah, it made me wonder if the mint leaves were left for me, like saying, "Hey, like rub these on you." And
Right.
but I don't know. That's why they were left, but it made it, the thought of it made it kind of a profound thing for me.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing major, I would say. Like a lot of people say they've been left, bones and things like that. I did have a marble that was left one time that I'd never left there. A golf ball, and actually, what was crazy about that is a month after the golf ball was left, I was going through an area of the woods to the west of the base station that I didn't normally go through, and found a golf ball, like out in the middle of nowhere in the woods. It was, yeah. So I'd assumed they maybe found it out there, or whatever, and left it as hey, here's you something or whatever. I don't know, but I didn't get a lot of things back. Just a few times.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's interesting. Golf ball.
Have you had any more situations like you did with the where y'all was tossing the rocks and you marked them and they tossed them back to you? Has that happened again, or?
No, nope. Haven't even tried it again, actually. Haven't even tried it again.
That was an interesting mind boggler there.
Yeah. I kept one of those rocks. It sits in my kitchen window.
That's cool.
Do you threw them and they tossed them back at you?
No, I'll tell the story real quick. So
yeah.
There's this place at the time. I was always tracking the large male up into this area that we call Crawler Hill. It's like the highest point out in this area. And once you get about a quarter of the way up this mountain, it becomes all hardwood. So there's a lot of space between the trees, and it's like a solid canopy. So there's nothing in between the trees, right? It's just trees and that's it. And they're spread out. And so it doesn't give them a lot of places to come in being unseen, right? So we go up to the top of this mountain, not the very top. We stop about 20, 30 yards from the top. And the top is kind of flat, and it's got a good mix of trees, and there's some cedar up there, and there's some open area, and so our idea was that we would go and camp just below that, and that would be the only area they could come in without being seen, right? It would kind of take away the vantage point, that 360 vantage point that they normally would have, right? So the first night we're sitting out there, and it was pretty calm, didn't have much going on, but I'd been kind of getting the vibe that these things were around, and we crawled in the tent, and for 6 hours these things threw rocks all around camp. Never hit the tent. They hit everything except the tent, like the table next to the tent. And we had a parabolic set up, actually. The parabolic was set up about 20 foot from the tent, the cable run in, and we're sitting in there with headphones on listening to what's happening up above us, right? So like we're literally hearing like footsteps, like choo, 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 and then you'd hear a rock hit, and then you hear it like almost backstepping, So that went on all evening. Like we slept through part of it, we would fall asleep with the headphones on, and we'd wake up to a bigger, like a rock hitting side by side or something. And so the next morning, I decided, of course, I'm going to go track, right? So I'm going to go figure out where they came in, where they, which direction they came from to get to the top. And long story short, I got onto it, tracked them up the west side of the mountain, and then they kind of moved around to the back, made their way around to the south side, and then up to the top, and tracked them all the way in to like almost the tree line area that was near the edge at the top, right? So I could see that they had been moving in and out in front of that area. So I videoed all this too. So this is all logged on video. That'll, someday if it needs to come out, it'll come out. But I went down and showed Randy the video, told him about it, and then just like had a little spark in my head, and I started collecting rocks. And each rock, I would, on one side of it, I just put a little bitty black mark on it. And then I took those rocks up there and put them in 3 different areas, 3 different spots. And the next night, same thing. We had rocks being thrown, not as long that night, but the next morning we get up and start combing, camp for those rocks. And sure enough, we had them, Now, that was basically it. It was like a simple little thing, just thought of in the moment, and it worked. So just a little funny experiment I did,
It's cool. It's cool. How big the big male you were talking about earlier? I don't know. I can't remember if you mentioned his size. Yeah.
His tracks were 14 inches back then, like a couple years ago, and what I'm seeing now is about 16.
Big boy.
Yeah, maybe a little smaller. I'm seeing these in in leaf litter, wet leaf litter. I like tracking, this time of year when there's leaves on the ground. I like tracking after rains and on like real dewy mornings and stuff. So that's all I'm getting out of him right now. So they could be a little smaller, than what I'm seeing, just because of movement and whatnot.
Right. You think, Shane, that in different parts of the country where people are seeing these, I'll call them entities as opposed to other names, but do you think people are seeing the ones that look different? You think they're a different entity altogether, or do you think they're subspecies of Bigfoot, Sasquatch?
My thought at this point, and I'm just using the data that we're finding.
Yeah.
With this project, I really just try to stick to the data that we're finding on within this project, right? So what I'm seeing is that these things may be a human primate versus a non-human primate.
Okay.
And if that's the case, they're going to have all kinds of different looks, just like we do.
Sure.
Right. To an extent,
Sure.
they're going to have variations.
Yeah.
Like I've got a whole slew of new tracks. I've already casted this new juveniles track. And we actually put it on Facebook. I put the trackway out. But there were over 100 tracks in mud. I casted 15 of them. I took the time to like purposely get the foot in different positions.
Yeah.
And these are pristine tracks. I mean, they're unbelievable. But all the tracks, and Gary knows, like before, I've had so many trackways out there that we don't really talk about. But we're being more open about them now. All the tracks that I've gotten out of the 400, they show arches. And what we're seeing is as they grow, they flatten out. Okay. But arches are showing in the adult tracks too, man. Like,
oh wow,
Meldrum can say what he wants, but like there's pictures of Jeff Meldrum holding adult tracks that he says that are legit, that are hourglass shaped. And if they're hourglass shaped, they have arches. It's that simple. Like these tracks that we're seeing, they're like, we're within these tracks as these things are growing, we're seeing that, we're seeing some morphology changes and whatnot. And I will say that some of these tracks almost show what may be considered a mid-tarsal joint, right? But there's a lot of misleading things out there when it comes to the mid-tarsal joint. Like a lot of people, when they think about it, they think it's in the middle of the foot. And so you hear that term half track. That's not the case. That's not the case. The mid-tarsal joint is like literally just in front of the ankle.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's no way to make a half print. It would have to be like a 3/4 print, right? Like our tracks, they're showing a medial longitudinal arch. They're showing, the interior arch, which is, the ball of the foot, basically. And they're showing the lateral longitudinal arch, which is on the outside. Like they're literally showing all three arches. And if that's the case, that would classify them as a human primate versus a non-human primate.
Here's the thing, Shane. Me and you, we talked about this a bunch, and I had a long conversation with Mr. Beldrum about this. The human foot. We try to compare these things with human foot. We have bound our feet for the past 7 generations. The human foot that we are comparing this with, your foot, and your foot, because mine's different because I have unbound my feet for the past 10 years and I see it changing. The foot that we're comparing these things with, you can't compare it with it because it's not a natural foot. And the bone structure of the foot stays the same. That metatarsal mid step, as we want to say, can move up and down the foot depending on what they're doing with their feet. Watch a ballerina dancer. A ballerina dancer can go from here to here to here to here to straight on their toes. The same thing with these guys. It's very simple. Shane, you're the one that brought that up to me, years ago when we was talking about tracking and talking about martial arts. When you don't wear shoes, your feet change. And I get so tired of people trying to compare these things with a modern day human foot. You look at foot, as you would say, fossilized footprints of primitive man. You need to compare it with that because our feet have been bound so much that our toes pull together. They don't spread out. It's not a comparable fact. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's all true. It's not. And it's very logical that their feet would flatten out over time.
Absolutely.
Especially with their size and their weight. And
absolutely.
And what we think we may be seeing is that time frame is just like humans, for instance. Like when a boy hits puberty, he starts taking on muscle mass. He gets wider, he gets thicker. And that seems to be the case, and as they get wider and thicker and heavier, and that they have more downward pressure on their feet.
Absolutely.
This makes sense that they're going to flatten out.
And
right?
Another factor to factor into that, Shane, you're the one that got me on this process about 6 years ago, is look at a bear. The bone structure of a bear doesn't change, but they can literally change from when they come out of hibernation in the spring. A big brown can be 3 inches narrower than he is when he goes into hibernation just from weight loss. But the foot structure, the actual length of the metatarsals and the tarsals, stays the same. So even with these, if we want, I have a hard time with entity anymore. I try to say the target species because entity is like they're spiritual,
right?
Which they very well could be. I don't know, but with this target species, but even with diet and depending on where they're at or in their life, like you were saying, if one of them got a bad tooth or they twisted their ankle or got a deformity in their foot, they'd lose massive amount of weight in a short period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other thing is, we recently captured samurai chatter.
Oh yeah, I know.
So
lucky.
I've heard it before out there. It was actually done to me or towards me from about 10 foot away when I approached one of the juvies one night just outside camp, and the recorders didn't pick it up. because of the distance, and it did it to me. Like when you listen to the Sierra sounds, the chatter, not the language part, but the chatter. When you listen to it on the Sierra sounds, it's loud and like there's distance between them and the guys that were out there, you know. This was like 10 foot away from me, so it was like it was like more monotone, like my voice right now, like it was speaking it to me personally, right, from like 10 foot away. So I knew that at some point, like it would just take time that we would capture it, right? So we recently captured it, and Scott Nelson has it, and he's comparing it to the Sierra sounds. It's not the language part, you know, the language that he pulled out of the Sierra sounds, but it's very similar to the chatter, what they call the samurai chatter that's on there. So we get into language, and that's another human characteristic. And like when you look at apes, you look at their oral cavity and their throat, right? Humans have a 1-to-1 ratio. So the distance of our oral cavity is the same distance of our throat down to our vocal cords and our voice box, right? Apes have a 2-to-1 ratio. So it would take 2 of their vocal areas in their throat to make 1 of the oral cavity, which pushes their vocal box and their vocal cords up behind the oral cavity. Does that make sense? Yeah. So us having a 1-to-1 ratio and the different angle, you know, because we're bipedal and we stand up and we're not hunched over, that's what allows us to use the consonants that they can't use and have like a verbiage and a language.
There's an elongated neck.
Yeah, in the 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
And if these things have a language, that would mean that they most likely have a 1-to-1 ratio, which would also put them in the human primate category. So, you know, these are the things that we're like seeing in our data as far as the physicality and what may, you know, the things that could maybe tell us what they are. But that's not to say, you know, that if these things are some kind of mix, they may have, you know, they may have points in their DNA from different things, you know. So we may see different things and things that we don't expect from a quote unquote human primate, you know. So who knows? But we're seeing humanistic things, you know, in our data. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. You know, it's hard to say, like, for me, there's not enough evidence to say positively what they are, but we're seeing aspects of a human primate, possibly. So, you know, I'm going to have a hard time saying for sure what these things are until we all know 100%. Right. You know, I want to. And that's purposefully, I want to leave that open, because if I set myself in stone on a belief from a few pieces of data, then it's going to construe what I may think about the next piece of data that may not say the same thing, that may go against it. So I have to keep my mind somewhat open, you know.
Right, because you got to follow the data.
Exactly.
I want to kind of stir the pot a little bit here. Even though I've been out of the community, I'm still doing research, but this is going to be right down Nick's alley too. And it was actually brought up to me to ask you, Shane, from an individual that we both know and classify as a very close friend. I'm seeing a lot in our reports that we're getting in the past, you know, 6 months to a year. I'm seeing an influx, especially Nick, talking to Nick, of Dogman and Bigfoot being seen together. Have you seen any evidence of, I know because I know you're kind of into the Dogman thing a little bit too, but have you seen any evidence of that in I'm talking about physical dogmen, not, you know, they're seeing physical dogmen along with physical target species. Have you seen any evidence of that in your research?
I haven't. When I first got into this, of course, you know, like when in 2013, when that stuff happened, I had no idea where to go, who to be able to talk about this stuff with, right? So my wife was like, "Hey, you got to get on Facebook, and there's groups for stuff like that." Well, I wasn't even on Facebook, So I joined Facebook, and as I'm going through and, trying to find Bigfoot groups and stuff, throughout that process, there's Dogman groups out there too. And I was seeing a lot of people were correlating. So I looked into it early on, and I haven't really seen evidence of it myself. I will say this: in my old area one time, this is the one time that I saw this is what you wanted about it.
Exactly.
In my old research area, this is the one and only time that I saw the little one, like the youngest one. And it was exposed in a brush pile. As I walked up on it, I had enough time to snap 2 pictures, and it backed into the brush pile. So I just, I stayed where I was at. I didn't go forward. And as I'm standing there, like watching, hoping, it'll poke its head back out or something, I think to myself, oh crap, mom's got to be around here somewhere, right? I was so asphyxiated with like seeing this young one that I wasn't even thinking about that, and then it hit me. So I immediately started, kind of scanning around, and as I looked back towards the pile, there was a knock, and so immediately I start scanning towards where the knock came from, and there was a head. It looked like a head sticking out from behind this tree, and it was black, and it had a snout, and it had ears. I've got a picture of it actually. I took it with my phone, so it's not a great picture, but like you can see the snout, you can see that it has a snout, you can see the ears on it. It's maybe the head is at maybe the 5-foot point on this tree, and the grass and everything is, I don't know if it was behind the tree, if it was standing next to it, because the grass and everything in front of it was covering everything but the head. Like I felt as though it was like looking over the grass and the thicket in front of it, right? Versus trying to look through it. Whether it was squatting down, so it's more of it wasn't exposed, or it was looking out from behind the tree. I don't know. I didn't stick around long enough to figure that out. And I hadn't seen anything like that out there before, and what I was seeing didn't look like what I was out there for. And it's actually the only time out there that I got a little skittish, and I hiked on out that day after that. And, it was like checking over my shoulder occasionally, trying to have my own 6. And that's the only thing I've ever seen. That's the only thing I've ever experienced. And I can't say what it was because it was too far away. I took the picture, and like you can zoom in on the picture and you can see the shape of it. And you can see that it does have a snout and ears, and you can see where the eyes kind of are. But other than that, there's not a lot of detail in it. So I don't know what it was. I could have been mistaken. It could have been anything, like it could have been a growth off the tree or something that my eyes were seeing and mistaken for that. Like, I don't know what it was. And I've just left it at that,
Yeah,
but in the moment, I thought I was seeing a dog head.
Sure.
And thinking to myself, what the hell is going on here?
when you showed it to me, my first thought was a black bear standing up and looking at you. But
right.
with you coming up on the juvenile, and that's the reason I wanted to get into this, because this is Nick's area. I mean, he's my go-to man when it comes to Dogman reports and this kind of stuff. Yeah. And when you had that situation like that, I'm hearing a lot of influxes of that. And me and Nick worked on a case together last year. Well, his team actually came out to take care of something. And I've always wondered if you could you send that to Nick and let him see that, because it is intriguing.
Yeah. I'll send you the original actually, and I'll send you some blow-ups and crops of it too.
Yeah, it's interesting. But the reason I was getting at that is I've always wondered, especially in that Missouri area, because my area is south of you. You know where my area is at, Shane. And I'm getting an influx of these, what they call, I guess, Janoskwa or Gugwe or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
But I am finding anomalous tracks. I mean, we just found some couple of months ago that don't look like a typical they literally look like a narrowed Sasquatch track with claws. And I'm thinking maybe a bear track, or, you know, a double step
marks
bear
in it.
track or something. What's that, Nick?
I said yes, with the claw marks in it.
Yeah, that's I don't know what that is, and Shane knows my area. Has been down there with me, and it's pretty woolly in there. But I was wondering if maybe you had, since I've talked to you, because I haven't talked to you in a while, Shane, if you had any experiences like that or heard of any up there. Because I mean, really, as a crow flies, it's not that far apart. But I wanted you to tell that story, that way I could get Nick to take a look at that picture, because it's pretty intriguing. I mean, I've seen a lot worse.
It's definitely interesting, you know. Even now when I look at it, like I see a dog head.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't see a bear when I look at it. I see a dog head.
And anybody that would know a bear's head would be you, because of the area you're in.
Right. And in the moment, and this may have been just so it didn't spook me long term out there. You know, in the moment, I wrote it off as, you know, like a dark colored coyote or something, you know, that was standing up against the tree, you know, standing up against the tree to look over the thicket at me. You know, that's how I wrote it off in my mind.
But man, you know, I know dogs better than a lot of people. I've never seen a dog do that. I've seen them do it over a fence, to look over a fence, but I've never seen them stand up next to a tree like this and go, "Hey, how are you doing?"
Right.
That's the reason I wanted to bring that up, because it that was, of all the things that we've talked about, you know, we've spent hours talking with tracks and everything else, but that is the one anomaly that stands out. Even your spiritual stuff kind of falls into a certain track way and a pattern way, and because I know you've studied a lot of the spiritual stuff too, that Nephilim and stuff like that, but that one incident has stood out in what I've known of your career and your experiences, and it's interesting. Let's just
I've never found any tracks that I could correlate with that. But you know, out there, and that was actually early on. I think that was just like 3 or 4 months into the research out there, you know, and may not even have been that long. I'd have to go look at the date on the picture. I don't remember exactly when that was, but it was within the first several months of the research out there in that first area. So
it was black, you said, Jane?
Yeah, it was black, solid black, you know.
Well, and the looking from the side of the tree like that, that's the reason I wanted to get Nick's kind of input on it, because that seems to be kind of a commonality with what I'm here is reading of Dogman reports and stuff, as I'm peeking from behind a tree or standing next to a tree, and that's the reason I've always wondered if maybe it was a brown bear, because I've seen a lot of not brown bear, but black bear. I've seen a lot of black bear, you know, brace up on the tree and look, but But you, of all people, knows and a lot of people out here, I don't care what anybody says, if you've been around a black bear enough, you know what a black bear has head like. It does not look like a dog. It's just even, and I knew that you would be able to express, you know, the difference in that. I'm sure Nick gets a lot of reports that people saying are dog, and they turn out to be a black bear.
It's funny, Gary, did you talk to one of my team members? Because I just came back from North Carolina today.
Actually, no, I haven't. No.
I was over there.
I knew you was in there
with the full team, and we had 7 reports, 7 different people in reference to reports. And I didn't write the report up yet, but it's in Washington County, North Carolina, and 7 reports of a dogman standing bipedal, right near trees, going through fields. And we were there for 3 nights and 3 days straight looking around. And I'm going to let it loose here, because we won't be putting this interview out until what, late tomorrow, Jay?
Tomorrow. Yeah.
All right, because I still have to write it up, and I promised my group I would put it in.
Yep.
Washington County, North Carolina must have some of the biggest black bear. And as you know, bear will stand up on their two hind legs there just to get a sniff or a look at something. This was a dogman report from 7 different subjects, and it turned out to be a bear. Turned out to be a black bear. In fact, I researched it a little bit, and Washington County, North Carolina actually has reports of the largest black bear on record, 880 pounds.
Yeah, 80.
Wow.
And we actually spotted this one, and we actually had to let loose with 2 loads of bear spray. I didn't want to
Wow.
kill it. I did not want to kill it. Everybody had their rifles aimed at it. We did not want to, destroy this animal, but it was getting a little bit too curious about us. And we were in a diamond formation, and I told everybody to just stand down, and we blasted it with our bear spray,
Wow.
and it took off. But I would say this one, when he was standing on his hind legs, he was 6'5". That is a big black bear.
That is a big
Yeah, it
boy.
is.
I've seen black bear before. I saw a 600-pound black bear in Jersey, and he was maybe 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
But this one here, 6'5". He was enormous,
That's nuts.
absolutely enormous. So, Jay, that's what we found when I was out there.
That's funny.
That
Yeah,
was
I bet.
it was not a
Wow.
dog man. I was hoping.
Yeah.
Hoping, but we heard the snorting and everything at nighttime because we were in his area. We found quite a bit of scat. I found some tracking, tracks over there, bigger tracks than normal. And then when we spotted him in the morning, I could understand why the tracks were as big as they were. Only a brown bear or a grizz is going to put, a track about yay wide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this thing was about a little bit shorter, smaller than that, but they were big. Unbelievable. And he stood up, looked dead on at us, and you know how they say everybody just, gather around and make yourselves look big. Well, I don't think we impressed him too much. Not until we blasted him with the bear spray. My bear spray goes 36 feet, and it shoots out in the conical shot. 2 of us shot the bear spray at him. It hit him, and he took off. But
if you got to within,
I wasn't about to put a 308 in his head. So
if you'd have got to within that close of him, he was being a little bit rambunctious. Usually a black bear will not come in that close.
he was a little bit closer than 36 feet, Gary.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah, that backs the behavior of the sightings that you're telling too. That he's almost at the point that need to get a whole game fish.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, we came upon, we heard him. We came upon him, everybody. We just froze in place, and he just popped right up in front of us. And as I saw the head coming up, with the ears,
Yeah.
I'm like, damn it, we got the dog, man. We got him. Nope. It was a bear. And he had a pretty pronounced snout too. Most black bear, they're like medium. I mean, this one, he had a long nose on him. So there it is. Jay, I was out there for all those days and nights. We were out at nighttime tracking this thing.
I figured you would come back with some stories, Dogman stories.
Oh,
But I would not classify that as a wasted trip. To me,
Oh, wait.
that is something legitimate. That's something that you can put tangible. You can put your feet on. And that excites me. That I would have loved to have been on that trip. That's
man, I'm telling you, I had the full team. We were totally jocked up, ready to go. We were out there at nighttime tracking. We had the night vision goggles. We found tracks. We heard noises. We never found them in the nighttime. In the daytime, I mean, there it was. We stopped and it popped right up. But I got all excited. I was like, yeah, finally, I got a Dogman. I saw the head coming up, clearing the brush, and there it is. It's a bear. As they say, sometimes the bear gets you, and sometimes you get the bear. This time we got the bear.
Yeah.
I got one more thing, Shane.
Yeah.
When are you going to release the crawler footage?
Probably won't. I probably won't. Like,
You probably won't. Man, that's some of the best. That is some of the
what I put out is probably all I'll ever put out on that, just because it's been so long ago, and the footage is of course, what we had for cameras.
Yeah,
that
but
stuff,
even then, once we got the motion, I got it leveled out. That is some of the most.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Are you talking about the thermal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There ain't nothing on Finding Bigfoot that'll touch that. Oh, was I supposed to say that?
No. Well, we may, at some point we may like put that out and go over it thoroughly, and we've discussed it. Actually, we have several things like that we should probably put out at some point, but we're just with what we're doing right now and time being a factor. Like now we're into something a little more serious now. Like we have a film crew with us that's going out with us all the time, and like for the next year they're going to be with us and filming everything that we're doing, and so at some point, depending on what happens and how things go, if we get some slow time where we're not getting a lot of action and stuff, we may go back and start working with some of that stuff and put it out eventually, but right now it's with the way things are, personal lives and on the research side, we got to keep trucking forward.
About a year and a half ago, me and Nick was talking about doing a show about just doing unbiased reviews of a lot of that night vision type footage and stuff, because a lot of people need to understand the range differences and stuff depends on the camera. It's not like with a regular, camera and stuff, but that would be a good deal if you just put a montage of that together and did a show, and whether it turned out to be real or I don't want to say that, whether it turned out to be the target species or something else, but doing that evaluation and being able to give the backstory and because I know y'all did go back up the hill and went to that same area, so what range that was. But that would be something to, if you ever did get slowed down, I'd love to sit and listen to y'all analyze that and put it out, because it's
me too.
Yeah, it's interesting footage for sure. Like it's one of those videos that like we can put that out, but we can't prove that that's Sasquatch.
Yeah.
But when you see it, like you clearly see what we're saying that we're seeing. Everybody that has seen it has agreed that whatever it is shaped and moving how we say it is. Everybody's agreed with this.
Shane doesn't want to say it. I'll say it for him because I have no dog in this fight. But that footage is better than anything I've seen. And I will personally say that if it's not, everything that everybody else is putting out is definitely not, because it's
right.
Well, here's the thing now too, is like now we have an $11,000 thermal drone that is unbelievably, it's unbelievable how clear the camera is on this thing. It has a 6K color camera on it too.
Ooh, nice.
And you can picture in picture so that you can use the thermal during the day, and you're also filming in 6K color too. Right. So, and you get both of those versions of the recording and like I have we spent the money on ATN 4x40 monocular. Zoom on it is crazy. Like we've already, like with Randy's thermal, we're actually getting ready to pick him up one of these the same thing, the ATN monocular. We're going to get him the 1x16 because the 4x40 is for zooming in and saying for sure what it is, and the 1x16 it has a bigger field of view.
I think mine's a 1x8. Mine's not quite as narrow as that.
Right.
1x16.
Yeah. The higher you go, the smaller your view gets. But it also allows you to reach out and touch the subject.
And the beauty of that thing is it'll actually measure for you and shoot laser and range. They're nice.
Yeah, it's a unbelievable piece of equipment. It was like
absolutely
for $5,000. It's definitely worth the money and the clarity. But like we've got better thermal than what you've seen, Randy. I mean, Randy has gotten this summer.
Yeah.
We put Randy out there by himself several times for 10 days.
Finally. Wow.
And I would come in on weekends and spend 2 or 3 days with him. And anyway, we had one come in at the creek, at the bank of the creek.
Yeah.
and which is like 25 yards from where Randy was sitting.
Yeah.
And he just happened to have the thermal pointing at it, and then noticed it on the screen. He was actually working on his rig, and while he was working on it, just that thermal just happened to be pointing in the direction that it needed to be. And it's like a 17-minute video, and he eventually went out to it. He couldn't go in a straight line to it because of where it was at. There was a lot between him and the subject, and he didn't, like, it's a harness and stuff that he puts on.
Yeah.
And he didn't have time to do that because he knew he would lose it, right? Yeah. So he just like gathered all of his stuff up in his arms. Like this is a 12-volt system. So he has a 12-volt lithium battery and a DVR. It's like really old school, but it's badass. And so he had to take our trail from camp to the creek, which is dried up at the time. And then, go back down the creek just 5-10 yards, and he would have been able to see it if it stayed in position, right? He would have been looking at it from its backside, basically. And anyways, as he's going out to it, and the thermal's moving around and stuff, and he catches it here at a couple points, and then by the time he gets out to the creek and points down, it's gone. Right before he got to the creek, you hear him say, "Oh, it's going through the creek," because he heard it steps in the gravel going into the creek bed. And so he scans for a minute, and finally he catches it on the other side of the creek, going away from him to the west, up the hill just a bit. But we've got that thermal, and we put me in the same place and did a recreation, and the thing is like my size, like me in the same spot, in the same position, looked almost exactly the same, except for the heat signature. You could tell that, like, I'm wearing clothes and stuff, right? This thing, the heat on it was very solid. Like it was kind of, I know you can't really see my shoulder, but it had its shoulders turned just a little bit and was looking like this, right? Kind of at an angle. So you see this whole shoulder, you see the whole head, and like this part through here. And the heat signature was all the same everywhere except for the mask area, like the face area. And it was lit up more because there was less air, right? And you can see the difference in how bright the heat signature is around it. So it's an interesting piece of footage. There's about 17 minutes of it. We've released a still picture of that, and a still picture of me in the same position. But other than that, it's, we haven't released the video itself yet, but we will eventually. We will eventually.
That's cool.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, we're still last weekend I got called to an area northwest of me, and there was probably 300 tracks in this mud flat of these 3 individuals. And you know what we found out there, Gary? Mussel shells all over the place.
Once again.
And
it makes sense.
These footsteps aren't walking straight through; they're meandering around out there,
like they're reaching down and getting them. Yep, it just makes sense.
And when these tracks were left, like, we were having below zero weather here, like -9 at times. I would suspect they were possibly left during the day, versus in the middle of the night when it was that cold. I could be wrong, but I didn't get to them for a week. The people found them, and I found out about them, and I sent my number their way, and they reached out to me. In the following weekend, they met me out there to look at them, which was last weekend, and everything was thawing at that point. And so I got there before the tracks. It hadn't rained or anything, so they hadn't been washed out, and they'd lost some detail, from everything thawing. But they were really good tracks. I mean, they were worth casting, and I didn't cast any. I should have probably, but at this point, like in the mud flats out in the 400, we get such good detail if I catch them.
You wouldn't be.
that yeah, all the hydrocal that I have and that Randy has goes into the tracks at the 400.
You know, that's something that we've talked about in the past. Me and Jeremiah's talked about, and me and Nick's talked about, but we've never done it together. But it just makes so much sense. The least amount of calorie outtake together, calorie intake. I'm finding that in my own personal research, that the more I use my survival training, Shane, we talked about this a lot. I use my survival training. So what would I do if I was in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I get into that area, that's where I'm finding the evidence. And to say that, I want to say this because I know this will stir the pot a lot with a lot of people, but that is the type of evidence I've been finding. I haven't seen a lot of the spiritual. I can't say that. I've been seeing a bunch of that too, but I honestly think it's two different things, because the stuff that I'm seeing it's like a physical, biological creature. I've been seeing.
Well, as you know, Gary, like I've walked out to these things on several occasions, and nothing crazy is happening. Like they're not disappearing. They're not, like, none of that crazy stuff has happened. I call it crazy, not meaning that people that experience that are crazy, but just like in the realm of normality. If I walked out to a tree that I'd just seen one behind, and then it wasn't there, I would say it disappeared too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Possibly. If I felt like there was no way for it to get away.
How many times they're not doing this?
Right. Exactly. And that's where my mind goes when I think in those situations. I haven't experienced it. So, like, once I started the 400 project, it's like I'm very critical of myself when it comes to my thinking. Like I only want to think on the terms of the data that we get there, so that I don't skew the evidence, and so I don't influence myself the future evidence, So since I've started this project, I've kind of narrowed my view.
Yeah, your focus.
And I don't listen to a lot of other people's encounters, and I don't look at a lot of people's research, just because of that. And it's nothing against anybody, and I'm interested. There's people's research that I'm interested in, but I just feel like I have to somewhat stay away from everything else, so that I can really focus on the task at hand, which is in the 400.
Right.
Yes.
Understandable.
It's funny that you bring that up, because I'm going to come back to Jeremiah and Nick. These guys know my situation better than pretty much as good as I do. And of course you do too, because you was there when we went back to where I had my sighting, and you knew how I would get stirred up and so wound up about this stuff. And, you and Randy kind of helped me get over that weekend. Well, we went back and I was still having a lot of issues with it. And I've talked to you a little bit about it, but we went to our first we went all the way in to the Comiskey Game Reserve. When I told you I hiked in years ago, well, we drove in one weekend. They finally got a logging road in there. But before I went in, Nick mentioned something to me. We was actually talking about building a AR, but he got to talking, and he says, why don't you, when you go this trip, he goes, why don't you just not do any shows, not do any reading, not do any research, and just go in with an open mind? Don't let your dad talk about Bigfoot the whole way down there. Don't get worked up. Flatline your response. And when we went in for 3 days, man, we had 9 people with us, and we thought we had the saving grace of Bigfoot evidence. We had guttural growls, we had stuff getting thrown, we had screams, we had visuals. By the time the weekend was over with, we wrote everything down. We stepped away. We didn't get worked up about it and talk about it the whole time. The last day we sat down, 5 of us, with our pens and papers, and started analyzing everything, and went to each person's stories and went through it. We found out that the guttural growls was otters in the river. What seemed to be getting thrown. Everybody laughs about me after using the bathroom. I thought one threw a rock and almost hit me. Come to find out, we was on a shale slope. You know how that area is down there, Shane. You've been in it. And a big acorn hit a hollow shell. So 95% of everything that we thought was the greatest Bigfoot evidence turned out to be biological, for the simple fact that we did not hype ourselves into this supernatural mindset. And that, you've been doing that for years. That's one thing that I've always respected about you. Even years ago, you'd be helping me doing a show or something and be like, I don't know what you're talking about, dude, because I'm not in the community. For me, I got out of the community. I thank y'all for inviting me back in for this show, but now I focus on the research, and I am finding that my enjoyment and my ability to ascertain a non-biased evaluation of a stimulus is so much better now, because everybody knows I'm a believer, but I'm not a scared believer no more. I've got a clear mind when I think about this. And I think you got a good point right there with and I love how Nick does it. He hears more of the crazy reports than any of us. I know some of the stuff that comes through there, and he's a believer in it. But when they hit the woods with a scientific observational mind, and you do too. Yeah. Jeremiah is even doing it now.
My problem is I'm a what I call a deep diver. So like, if I decide if I want to, listen to some people's stories or go look at other people's research, I'm going to do that for hours and hours and days. And like I don't do things 0%. I do them 100% or 0%. You know what I mean? Like, it's the only way I can do things. Like when I was a musician, when I decided not to be a musician anymore, I sold everything I had. Like, I don't even play guitar anymore because it will make me want to start a band and play music again, right? And I'll end up wanting to go 100%. Yep. So the things that I do in my life, I narrow them down, and I have a few things that I do, because if not, then everything gets convoluted because I can't do everything I want to do 100%.
Absolutely.
So it's that way with other people's research and other people's stories too. If I'm into that, and I have been in the past, I enjoy that. But that's what I noticed was I would go out in the field, something would happen, and I would catch myself remembering what I heard from this person, or from this person, or from this story. And I'm not analyzing the data that I'm getting with an open mind and with no experience. And that's where I want to come from. So hey, every time I say that, like I always feel like there's going to be people that's like, well, this guy's stuck up and all into himself, but that's not what it's about. It's literally so that it makes me feel like I'm going to have a better chance at analyzing what's happening in the present moment.
Yeah.
That's all it's about.
And it also gives, just like Nick used to tell me, when they step into the woods, they're loaded for bear. They're 100% rock and roll ready to go. But they don't have that mindset when they step in, right, Nick? When they step in, they're just flatlined. It's just, we have it if we need it, but let's keep the mindset we're not going to use it unless we have to.
Yeah, we only have it because we're going 5, 6, 7 miles into the woods, and we are allowed to come home safely. We're allowed to defend ourselves, so we'd only use it in a case where we've been attacked. And I go into all of this with the mindset to prove or to disprove. That's what I've always done, prove or disprove. And like with these 7 individual cases that contacted us about possible Dogman over in Washington County, North Carolina, I spoke to every one of them on the phone, Shane. That's what I usually do, because you know what the cost involves in transporting 7 people
from New Jersey.
I do.
overnight, the food, the this, the that, everything, transportation. I'm not going to go there on a BS matter. Out of those 7 people, 4 of them came on camera with me, and I'm observing their faces while we're speaking. I want to see, and I want to listen to their voices and hear and have them answer the questions that I have for them. This particular incident was over a spread of 10 days, and everybody was damn sure that that's what they saw.
And they still are.
Some of them, they probably still are. I mean, I've contacted 2 of them already, and they're like, oh, they're all disappointed. they're members of other Dogman groups out there. A couple are members of Sasquatch groups. But like I told them, we saw it up close and in person. And, I've got visual verification. This was a bear. It was not a Dogman, albeit it did have a longer snout than your average black bear. But you know what? Some humans have longer noses than others.
Longer noses,
Absolutely.
longer
Absolutely.
chins. I got a big chin,
That's how we go into the research. That's the mindset we go in with. Like, we don't care. Like, I'm the type of person, like I have there's a lot of things and experiments that I've devised that I'm going to test. And for many years, and Gary can attest to this, I've been talking about building certain pieces of equipment, doing certain things to go after some of these theories within the community, right? I don't care whether I prove them wrong or right. It doesn't matter to me. All I want is the truth when it comes down to it. And all that matters to me is that at some point we're able to prove these things exist. And
Absolutely.
and like you have people that are looking into all sides of this, and we're over here going, oh, well, hold on, we need to prove they're real first before we can prove that
Absolutely.
they can open portals, or before they can do this or do that, or like even anything physical. Can they jump 100? Can they jump 20 foot? I don't know. There's evidence of it, but until we prove they're real, it doesn't even matter how far they can jump, right? Because if they're not real, they can't jump. So like that's in the 400. That's what we're doing as far as the project goes. All the other stuff doesn't matter. We're going through a process to get us close to these things on a consistent basis, to where we can eventually get it on thermal and 6K camera, and then get physical evidence from the subject live on camera, with no cuts. Like, we have a long-term goal, and none of it involves proving what these things can and can't do. It all involves proving that these things are real first and foremost. Because until we do that, none of the other stuff even makes a difference.
Absolutely.
Well, Shane, I know we're running out of time, but I had one last question.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
if you'll permit me, I got one last question to ask you, because I did a 6-month research project and it involved part of this. When you've had your sightings, have you at any time, before, after, during, seen any evidence of, how can I put it, objects in the sky, UFOs?
I have not.
Okay.
But I will say, I don't know if I should say this or not. I'll say it anyway. I don't care. From the time I was a young child till the time I was 22 years old, I saw UFOs in the skies all the time. Like, I don't want to overstate myself, but like at a certain point in my life, it was almost weekly. And I have tons of friends that had never seen anything themselves until they were with me for whatever reason,
Right.
But I used to look up a lot. I used to like stargazing, and I would lay out on the trampoline and look at the constellations and study the constellations, and when I was younger, you could say, where's Virgo? And I would point it out to you. It didn't matter what time of the year it was or what time it was. Like, I was really into looking up. So that may be one of the reasons, but I have not experienced that since I was 22. So.
Okay. Well, that's something I preach to everybody all the time, by the way, is to look up. Because when we're out there in the woods, everybody is looking up. And Gary, as you would know, Gary,
yeah,
when you're on patrol, you better be looking up, because you never know what's up there.
Go ahead.
Oh, I thought he was going to ask me about orbs.
Oh,
well, that's what I'm kind of getting to, is if UFOs or orbs, lit orbs.
I have seen orbs, but I haven't seen them while out
there with the Bigfoot.
I haven't seen them at the 400, and I haven't seen them in my old research area, but I have a theory on that.
Sir, if you don't mind.
Well, so with some other people I've been involved with in the past, there was a geologist involved, and his job was to find high energy points and then to go out and get physical readings in person, right? He started having, for lack of a better word, Sasquatch experiences in these areas, right? So eventually what we did was I gave him the county that the 400 is in, and asked him to send me a map of that county in the high energy areas, right? There's only one, and it runs right through the 400.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, so the county that my other research area was in, there was two high energy areas, and one of them was that research area. So it seems as though there may be a possibility that these things are maybe attracted to high energy areas for some reason. And in these high energy areas, you will see lights in the woods and you will see orbs and stuff, but it's a geological manifestation, right? It's because of the geological things going on in the high energy zone. And so my thought on it is that when people connect Sasquatch and orbs, and like Sasquatch turning into orbs or whatever, I don't know if that's possible or not, but I know that geologically those happen and they're real orbs. And from what we see, it seems as though Sasquatch may be attracted to these areas for some reason. And
look at all primitive man cultures.
If that's the case, you're gonna see orbs in Sasquatch in the same areas.
Look at all primitive man cultures. They seek out that stimulus. But a key example of Nick with looking up, I was within 20 miles of one of Nick's teams one weekend last summer, and we had anomalies in the sky. They seen it and we seen it from 20 or almost 40 miles. I think it was a little closer to 20 miles apart.
20 miles, I believe.
Yeah, I was just northeast of them on the same weekend, and they was working a report, and I was working a report, and we seen the same anomalies, which turned out to be blacked out aircraft, which really blew my mind. I was like, wow. But that was a weird weekend anyway. That's when I got that the best trackaway I found and videoed it. But
I've looked into a lot of things concerning like energy and things like that, and so to think that these things can turn into a ball of light, I just don't know, and there's people that have those experiences, and I'm not here to discount anybody's experiences, because I've had some crazy experiences myself, and but all I can say is this: I haven't seen it myself, and I can't correlate the two other than in that way.
Right.
Right. And again, that's data, right? That's data that we pulled out of the 400 to think about it, So
well, it's just like you said earlier, though. I think before we get to that point, I'm never going to discredit it. But let's prove the existence thereof, then prove the behavioral thereof and the biological thereof, and then start getting into the spiritual. You can't throw any of it out, but it's just a matter of science. I like to put it this way, and a lot of people get mad at me in the community anymore. I don't care, but they've been doing it for hundreds of years, and it's called a simple thing of scientific theory and scientific investigative theory. Works for law enforcement, the military. Why can't we do the same? And that's where all of you over the past 5-6 years that I've known you, that's what y'all are doing. You're doing scientific.
Here's the funny thing, though, is like when you think about they quote unquote the woo, even if there's quote unquote woo stuff happening, there's going to be science behind it. We just don't understand it.
That's right. That's
what
right.
I mean? So even if that stuff is real and it is happening, there's going to be science behind it.
Yes,
but
that's right.
To get to a point where we can figure the science of that out, we got to prove they're real first and the science behind it.
Absolutely.
Right?
We'll get there one of these days.
Eventually.
That Jay.
Yeah, gentlemen, I think we've ran out of time. Unfortunately, that was awesome, Shane. Can't thank you enough for coming on, man.
Definitely appreciate it, Shane.
Absolutely.
It was an honor. Anyone you want to give a shout out to before we get off here?
Oh yeah, I always shout out to Randy, and I'll give a quick shout out to Dan Nederloh and Cynthia and Alex and Blair. They know who they are, and Gary Spikes Jr. Good seeing you again, brother. Nice meeting you, Nick. And we'll also give a shout out to our web guy and our man behind the scenes, Gary Schutte. And that's about it, man. Just the team.
That's good. That's good.
All right, Shane, we appreciate it. And Gary, it was good having you back, man.
Hey, Gary, good seeing you, man.
Yeah, I need to.
We're gonna get we'll have the round table going after hopefully mid next week. Hopefully you can make it on. Shane will have to jump you on for one of those at some point.
Sure.
I have shut down all of my shows for the simple fact I'm concentrating on research. But I'll never leave a brother left behind. I've always been there for you guys. Same with you and Shane. But I'm enjoying the research more than.
Amen.
We literally, the greatest thing ever happened to us 6 months ago. We have contracts with both the Oklahoma Game and Fish and both of the major universities in the state of Oklahoma to do biological studies on different animals, like the black bear. We're doing bats, we're doing eagles, and I hate to say this, just like you was talking, Nick. I don't look at this weekend of you as a failure. I look at that as a strong research opportunity and a great thing, because it's a whole lot easier to find the black bear than it is a Sasquatch. I tell you, I've been looking.
Absolutely, for sure.
All right. Well, gentlemen, have a good night. Stick around for a minute after I stop recording, if you don't mind. But Shane, thanks again. Gary, thanks again. We will see you very soon, Gary. And Nick, I'll see you next week, brother.
Good night, everybody.
All right, good night, guys.
Night.
Have a good evening.
Recorded.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of On the Trail in Search of Living Legends. This is going to be episode 4 of season 5. Another season for another year. So anyway, tonight, joined by my co-host, Mr. Nick Valente, as usual. Nick, how's it going, man?
Hey, Jeremiah. Doing good, man. Doing good. How about you?
Couldn't be better.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm dealing with a lot of snow up here, though, in the Adirondacks.
Oh, I saw that. I saw that on the news. You guys got about 2.5, 3 feet.
A lot. Yeah, we're buried.
Yeah.
We got a great guest tonight, a gentleman that I have known personally for about, 5 years now, and just a all-around great guy. Very, very knows his stuff. I'll put it that way. You're not going to hear any bull out of this guy's mouth. He knows his stuff, and just a great guy all around in general, Mr. Wayne Tothro. Wayne, how you doing, buddy?
You're too kind, buddy. You're too kind, but I appreciate it. Doing well, buddy. Thank you so much for asking me to come on and do this. You came on my show a while back, and
yes,
it's my turn to return the favor.
We really appreciate it.
Appreciate having you here. I like you signing it back.
Yeah, I love that.
Taunt the Sasquatch.
That's probably a good life lesson right there. Good advice.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Just leave Sasquatch Snicker bars and Milky Way bars and see what happens.
And see what happens.
It's like feeding sugar to a 3-year-old.
Right.
There you go.
Zoom.
So anyway, we're gonna talk about some pretty cool stuff tonight. I know Wayne's got some stuff to throw at us, so we'll get right into it. Wayne, you want to give us a quick bio on yourself?
Sure. All right. About 3 years ago, I founded a Sasquatch research organization called Manimal Research.
Yeah.
I'd always been interested in the subject of Sasquatch and cryptids in general, everything weird, ghosts, paranormal, UFOs, but Bigfoot kind of held a special spot for me. And it's interesting how I actually got started was I had a job. I was working about an hour away from home. So I had an hour commute to work and an hour commute back. And my car went down, had to put it in the shop. So I borrowed my dad's truck. He had a spare truck. I borrowed it to get back and forth to work. And about 2 days after having it, the radio went out. What the hell am I going to do on 2-hour commute every day with nothing to listen to? So that's when I discovered podcasts.
Okay.
So I've always been interested in weird stuff. I found a podcast that dealt with the paranormal and encrypted stuff, and I started just binging the heck out of it. And I found myself wishing they would just hurry up and shut up with all the rest of the stuff and get back to Bigfoot. So I started searching around, and I found a podcast dedicated only to Bigfoot.
Nice.
It's really, really cool that there's something like this out there. I had no idea.
Right.
So I started binging it and getting more and more interested in it. And I started listening to all these people going out in their area and doing this kind of stuff and getting some really cool evidence, having encounters and stuff. And talked to my fiance at the time, it's my wife now. I talked to her about it, and she told me, she said, yeah, Wayne, you're passionate about this and you seem knowledgeable. We live in a great part of the country here in the Southeast. Why not just go for it? Just go ahead and start a group. And I wanted to start my own instead of joining. I looked into joining groups like the BFRO and the Wood Ape Conservancy and stuff like that. And it just, nothing against those groups. I think what they're doing some phenomenal stuff, but it just seemed like there was a lot of drama, a lot of name calling and stuff like that. And that's something that when I started my group, Manimal, I said that there wasn't going to be there's no negativity in our group. We don't pretend to be better than anyone else, because I've taken a lot of crap for this, but I truly believe that there's no such thing as a Bigfoot expert. They don't exist.
I agree.
How can you be an expert in something that we haven't proven yet?
Right.
So that's how I got my start.
Wayne, just for the audience, you're in the Tennessee area, correct?
Yes, sir. I'm in Southeast Tennessee. I'm right on. I can throw a rock into Georgia and pee into North Carolina.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Nice. So you got it from all 3 states then?
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
That's
and I totally agree with you on the drama. I do not like drama. I don't put up with it. As you know, I'm from the North American Dogman Project, Region 3 and 5, and I've got a group of excellent top tier admins, and we check all the comments that people put in and what they try to post, and we monitor all that, and we don't take any of that. We give them one shot, and if they don't like it, well, then we just ban them for life, because cryptozoology takes a hit from all over the place. It's bad enough that we're looked down on.
Yeah.
Then people have to go and ruin it.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more, Nick. I couldn't.
Yeah.
So as far as going out in the field, Wayne, how's that affected your life over the past, like you said, 3 years? Have you, as far as personal experiences?
It's made it more exciting. I mean, I can tell you that. I went out this past weekend. Me and a couple of our members went out and did an expedition on the Ocoee River down here in Tennessee. It's one of our hot spots. I've had a lot of activity in that area before, and had a really good trip. We got 4 whoops. We got screamed at 4 times. I don't know if they were screaming at us, but we heard 4 screams, whoops, I guess you would call them. We got 2 of them on film. We heard the 2, and then one of my buddies pulled out his phone and started recording after that second one. We ended up getting 2 more on audio, and we uploaded those to Facebook. You can find them if you're a member of Manimal. But to answer your question, it's certainly more exciting. I've had 1 sighting since I've been doing this. That was back in 2000, I think.
Okay.
And I was actually featured. I have been featured on a documentary that's airing on Tubi.
Yep.
They sent a production crew down to interview me at the beginning of this year, back in February, and I talked a lot about that encounter on that particular documentary, and you can see the pictures if you tune in and watch that show.
Very cool.
Nice.
Would you mind filling us in on it if you can, or is?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I got thermal images. If I would have thought, I would have sent them to you guys. I don't know if you'll have the ability to share or not, but I can still send them to you.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we were in North Georgia in a mountain called Pigeon Mountain. It's in Lafayette, Georgia, and we were up there on an expedition. There was 4 of us. It was January or February, I don't remember exactly, but it was bitterly cold. It was in the teens, like the low teens. It was ridiculously cold, and that might have played a part into why my FLIR kept dying. I don't know. A lot of people believe that these things can zap the battery life. I don't know. I experienced this, but I can't attribute it to Bigfoot or the cold.
Right.
Like I was saying, it was 13, 14 degrees outside, and one of our members, we had heard something across from us. One of our members went to check it out. He was an older gentleman, and he's walked older gentleman, but he's brave. I don't know if it was bravery or stupidity, but he went to check. He volunteered to go check it out. But he gets over there, and there's this downed tree, a log, probably 40, 50 feet long, and maybe not that, 30 feet. He stands on one end of it and starts to cross it, but when he steps on it, he feels it give way. So something was on the other end of that tree and the brush that he couldn't see that jumped off of it when he was on it, and it gave. So when that happened, he turned white as a sheet. He took off running back to us, and I knew this guy. He was scared. Yeah. I've been dealing with him for a while. Something would happen to him. He was bothered. So we kept watching that area over there and got a thermal hit. We got a hit on the thermal of something upright that was swaying left to right like this. And he was just standing there watching us from about 50 or 60 feet away. And then we noticed something out in front of it scurrying to the left and the right real fast. We couldn't tell what it is. We got a picture of it, but you can't make anything out. And we believe it was a little one, is what we believe. But the next day we went out, we did a size comparison in the area that it was standing, and it should have been around the 8-foot mark. Unless it was a very naked, very tall, crazy person in the woods, 13 degrees outside in North Georgia, something was standing upright watching us.
Interesting.
I don't think there's any basketball courts out that way.
No.
So yeah, you probably got something good.
Yeah, and like I was saying, the battery on the FLIR kept dying, and I charge all of my equipment before I go out every expedition. I charge everything. This thing had a full battery. It would die. I would get about 5 or 6 minutes worth of footage. It was so dead that I couldn't record. I could only take still shots. Wow. It would die on me. I'd run back to the truck, plug it up for 10 minutes, just enough to get a little bit more battery, run back. It was still there. That happened twice. On the third time back, whatever it was gone.
Wow. You know, it's not, that's not the first time I've actually heard things like that. And I'm sure you two both heard them as well about equipment dying down in the middle of filming or not being able to record, like in your case, Wayne. That's, I've heard that. I think all three of us have probably heard that. I've
heard that more than once, Jeremiah, more than once. That, someone would be filming out there and all of a sudden the battery just dies.
Yeah.
They swap out the battery and that dies after a minute or two. For some reason, and it's not the case with Dogman, it's mostly the case with the Sasquatch, that happens. And as you know, Jay, Sasquatch does the mind speak a lot.
Yep.
And it does all kinds of stuff. And I don't know, it's possible that's what happened. Did you have another battery with you, Wayne?
No, that was the only. This thing does not have an external battery. You plug it up and it charges. Yeah, so there's no way of swapping out a battery. And that's something that you would be a good person to ask, Nick, dealing with the Dogman. I'm not as familiar with Dogman.
Right.
Is there that kind of connection with Dogman? But do people talk about the telepathy and crazy weird stuff happening, like the draining of batteries with Dogman, or is that
Wayne? Not at all. I do research on all the cryptids. I concentrate on Dogman these days, but with Dogman, no. But with Sasquatch, what I've found, and this is throughout the country, also in Canada. There's been, I've recorded at least several dozen cases where the person is even in their car and their car battery dies.
Yeah.
You know, while the Sasquatch is in the area.
Oh,
Sasquatch
wow.
leaves the area, they call for a wrecker or for tow, they try their car and bam, it comes back to life. I mean, you know, it's an odd occurrence, but people are out there trying to film them with a, you know, regular film camera to this box type, and the battery dies. The guy changes out the battery because he had 2 or 3 with him. A minute later, it dies again. Now, Dogman's not known for mind speak. Sasquatch is, and people have been warned, you know, do not film me or you will be in danger. That's what a lot of folks have said. And I mean, I've spoken to hundreds of people throughout the years. And besides batteries dying, that's what they told me. You know, when they're trying to film them or about to shoot, you know, they're told, don't do it. It'll be the last thing you're going to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a possibility, Wayne. That might be why your battery died. It wasn't the fault of your FLIR.
Yeah. That's interesting. That is interesting, especially after you just fill the scent on the fact that there's no external battery on it. That's
you should have, Wayne, do you have a lithium ion battery in there? I think it's a rechargeable lithium ion.
What I was using at the time is, I think it's called a FLIR 1. It's the kind that attaches to your cell phone.
Okay.
So you have to download the app, the FLIR app. You connect it to where you charge your phone at.
Right.
It's got a port. You plug it directly into there, and then it turns your phone into a FLIR.
Yeah.
They're not as pricey as the handheld, you know, the big ones, but you know, still they're $300.
Yeah, I'm totally familiar with it, but you know, like why didn't your phone die, but the FLIR died?
Exactly.
You know, it's very odd. So I'm thinking that they have some sort of, you know, besides the infrasound that they're able to do, and he's been hit by the infrasound from a Sasquatch.
Not pleasant.
I think on 2 occasions at least.
You do 2 occasions, yeah.
You know, and the mind speak, they just have some connection. I don't know. Here, this is what I'd like to ask you. You think there might be a connection between aliens and Sasquatch?
You know what, Nick and Jeremiah, when I first got into this, you couldn't convince me of that. You couldn't talk me into it. I thought it was hogwash, that was something that's giving cryptozoology a bad name, is trying to connect those 2 things. But and the more people I've talked to over the years, and it's been in the hundreds now, I feel like there's something that we don't know is going on. There's some kind of connection, whether it be extraterrestrial. I can't speak to it, but when you start throwing out things like orbs,
right?
So many people seeing these balls of light and then seeing a Sasquatch right after it. And then how are so many people seeing crafts, like UFO crafts, and then seeing a Sasquatch, or vice versa, a Sasquatch and then a craft?
Right.
There's something to it. I really believe. When I first started, I was strictly biological. This is a flesh and blood creature. It's a North American primate that we haven't caught up with yet. Part of me still believes that. I really do. But the more people I talk to that's had these crazy encounters, this makes you think there's something out there, that the ability to cloak, to go into a portal,
right,
the mind speak and stuff like that. I don't know. There's something to it, and I'm not smart enough to figure it out.
Yeah, the portals, the portal and interdimensional possibility that they're able to do that. And I know Jay wants to get in there on something, but just real quick, I've spoken with Jay about this and other folks on other programs. I did a research project for 6 months on Dogman and Sasquatch interaction, you know, where people have seen them, had an encounter, and they've also had an encounter of an orb in the sky before, after, or before and after. Also, the ability for Sasquatch to just disappear right in front of you practically, you know, so they're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, there's reports of people finding trackways in the middle of a snowy field, and then the tracks just stop.
Yeah.
In the middle of the field. How does that happen?
Yeah. They just stop and disappear. You know, a line of tracks in the middle of snow swept field, and then they.
I mean, are they going through a portal right there, or is there an alien spacecraft taking them up?
Yeah.
Because it's a field. Now you see, Jay, I've had this in my research dozens of times.
Yep.
Where the footprint ends.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Now, where the heck did they go? We're still trying to find that out.
That's the question. And I know we all agree on one thing: the more questions we answer in this field, the more pop up. It's simple as that, And Wayne, like you, when I first started in this whole, this whole gig, I was a straight North American primate guy. You couldn't convince me otherwise.
Mm.
And over the years, the more weirdness that I experience, here's a possibility for you, and tell me what you think. Even if they are they could be a type of primate, North American primate, but have these abilities as well. You think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I think anything's possible.
Yeah.
I think that there's a connection between Native Americans,
yes,
and Sasquatch. I strongly believe that. Yeah. So to answer your question, I think it could very well be possible that it is a flesh and blood creature, but they have somehow evolved to have these abilities that we don't, or not evolved, but originally possessed them. And I don't know, but yeah, that's a great question.
It's a toughie, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that, because right before, not 5 minutes before you came on, we were talking about the connection between the natives and these creatures, and it's a very strong connection,
Yeah, you look at totem poles, old totem poles, and there's a big hairy thing on it, or there's a large foot or something like that. And in these caves, there's old drawings and stuff of big feet, and they had to know something.
They knew something, yeah, without a doubt. What I wanted to find out about your new show that you're doing.
Yeah, Paranormal Odyssey.
Yeah. You want to tell us a little bit about that? I've been interested to check it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited. This an exciting new chapter of my life. I am now considered a professional podcaster, I guess you would say, since I am getting paid now to do it. I won't be retiring from my other job anytime soon, but there is.
Oh, you mean you're not making millions? Seriously?
Not yet, and I really don't think that day is ever going to come. But yeah, and I'm a podcaster now, and I got that opportunity from a guy you guys might know, Mr. Brian King Sharp, who is the host of Sasquatch Odyssey.
Absolutely.
Brian invited me on his show, I guess 5 or 6 months ago. It was not long after I did the movie over on Tubi. He reached out and asked me to come on his show, and waited a little while. Just schedules weren't lining up, and then I finally did, and went on there, and we became just really, really fast friends. Talk quite a bit. We text, if not every day, every other day now. And my group, Manimal Research, we do an annual camp out. It's called the Squatch Out. The East Tennessee Squatch Out is what we call it. We do it every year. This year was our third one. And I promoted that on his show. And when I talked about it, he came on and said, yeah, and I might be there.
Oh, cool.
So invited him to come to the Squatch Out. He was one of our guest speakers. It was him and Connor, a.k.a. Bigfoot Anon, was a speaker. And Dr. John Baranchuk, who has written a book on Sasquatch and the scientific aspects of Sasquatch research. John is a very good friend of mine. He is a clinical psychologist, not psychiatrist.
Right.
But he's got his PhD in clinical psychology. He's a member of my group, Manimal Research. So Brian came out and spoke at that, and we started talking. And not long after that, he had mentioned that Brian does 3 different shows. He started Sasquatch Odyssey, and the success of Sasquatch Odyssey is just mind-blowing. It just become huge almost overnight. And he started Paranormal Odyssey, and then he started True Crime Odyssey. Brian's an ex-law enforcement. He's an ex-police officer, so he has a passion for true crime. So he has all three of those shows, putting them out weekly. That's a lot on one man. It really is.
Without a doubt.
So Brian watched my show. I guess he liked my style and how I do things. And he had mentioned that he wanted someone to eventually take over Paranormal Odyssey. And I said, what do you think about me doing it? And he jumped all over it. So I've been doing it. I put out I think my 11th episode came out today.
Yep.
And just in the month that I've been doing it, it's
blown up.
Growing.
It's getting, it's really growing. I really followed you. I've known each other a while now, and I've really noticed it, especially over the last, like you said, the last month. You're really having some success. What do you talk about, Wayne, on the Paranormal Odyssey? What differentiates that show from the other two?
The other one is, and to be honest, on my YouTube channel, I kept my YouTube channel, but I changed it to Paranormal Odyssey Live, and I had a group of faithful viewers that showed up every week when I did a show. No matter how many shows a week I did, they were always there, 30 or 40 of them. And then when I switched up and started covering other stuff other than Bigfoot, I kind of lost them. So I'm building a new audience on my YouTube channel. So everybody out there, if you want to tune in, I would certainly appreciate it. I go live every Friday night at 7:30 on YouTube, Paranormal Odyssey. But my other show was strictly Bigfoot, Sasquatch stuff, and Paranormal Odyssey is just that. I cover anything paranormal, strange, odd. Talk to a lot of ghost paranormal investigators, people on ghost hunting teams. I've talked to a couple psychic mediums. Cover different types of cryptids. I've covered UFO encounters. One gentleman that had been abducted a few times. So just anything weird that falls within that paranormal spectrum, I cover it.
Kind of like you and I, Nick. We try to, broaden the spectrum too. We try to cover everything. Because I think, with all these different, you have the paranormal side. It's all paranormal, but for language sake, that's how I'll put it. You had paranormal, Bigfoot, Dogman. There's the UFO. There's some sort of connection going on here. I can't explain it, like you said earlier. It's a tough one to put into words, but there's got to be some sort of connection, because, like Nick, you were saying a few minutes ago, how we were always talking about the sightings of these lights in the sky before, after, during an encounter, or whatever. There's got to be a connection of some kind with, some sort.
Yeah. Wayne, the research I did took 6 months. I had, at this point, it's over 800 people that I've spoken to. And at the time it was like in the 600s, but 92% of the encounters or sightings that they had of Bigfoot or Dogman, there was an orb in the sky before, after, or both before and after.
What percentage was that you said?
92% of the people that I spoke to.
Yeah.
This is throughout the whole country. 92% of the people, I took a poll. I heard their story, what they had, and their encounter or their sighting, and they either saw an orb in the sky before or after, or both before and after. Yeah. So something is going on. I mean,
Now, Nick, was that with Dogman encounters as well?
Dogman and Sasquatch combined. In other words, you either had a Dogman or a Sasquatch encounter, or sighting. And at the same time, you notice that there was something in the sky. I don't lead the people. What I do is I try to get them to think about it. Being ex-law enforcement myself, I know how to do an interview and interrogation. And I try to lead them to give me their story without me putting any words in their mouth. I want them to tell me their full story. And I'll, draw it out of them. Tell me what you saw. I would like to know the weather. How was the conditions at the time? Was it warm? Was it raining? Was it windy? Everything. And, I'll just ask the questions, but I want them to give me the answers. And 92% is a high percentage, Wayne. Yeah. Very high.
Extremely high.
Almost perfect.
Almost.
It's crazy though. I mean, I've had an encounter, and I've had 2 sightings and 1 encounter. And on that encounter, I did see it after. I did see it in the sky after an orb. And it's like, this is really weird because that was the direction that the Dogman took off in. And, I'm looking around saying, where's he going? Is he trying to circle around me or what's going on? And I see in the sky an orb. And this is weird. And it was no airplane. It was no helicopter. There was just an orb in the sky. And it's just amazing.
It's not only with sightings either, though. It's like with activity, period. It's like that. I'll send you the video later, Wayne. I sent one to Nick tonight. I was going through some old stuff, back from when I was in North Carolina a couple of years back when we first started talking, actually, a few years back. And I'm going through the stuff, and I get to this video clip that's 31 seconds long. Okay, and as soon as you click play, there's a big red orb floats to the middle of the screen and shoots off.
Yeah.
It's like a big red ball.
It is odd.
About 12 to 15 seconds after that orb disappears, you start hearing the ooh, a very deep howl.
Yeah.
It's just very, very interesting. So it's not only sightings, but I when I talk to people that, reach out to me, I always, like Nick said, I try to draw it out of them too. I'm sure you have your ways of talking to people as well, but I always find that an interesting subject to talk about is these lights in the sky, but
yeah. And like you said, man, there's something going on there. And on this last expedition that I went on last weekend, I was talking with the 2 guys that went with me, and we were discussing swapping stories, stuff that's happened to us, like all of us do. And I told them 2 things that's common in this field that tends to happen to a lot of people I have not experienced yet.
Right.
One of those is orbs. I've never seen an orb.
Right.
And the other one is having something thrown at me. I've never had a rock or a pine cone or a limb, anything like that thrown at me. Yeah. I'm waiting. You can call me crazy, but I'm waiting on those 2 things to happen. I mean, I might change my tune when they happen,
right?
But I'm waiting.
That is one of the scariest things, is to have a limb, especially a large limb, maybe 10 inches around, thrown at you. That's about 8 feet. Because I gave this case over to Jay that I had a year back in New York State, and I was out with 2 of my guys investigating a possible Dogman problem. It turns out to be a Sasquatch problem. And this thing threw a large limb at us. And one of my guys got injured. He didn't get hit by it, but it came so close that he tripped right over it and injured his knee. And it was like, whoa, where the heck did this thing come from? It definitely wasn't anything that fell down, from a tree. This thing came sailing out of nowhere at us. Yeah, you do not want that to happen. And then from other reports I've taken, they've thrown large rocks.
Yes.
I mean, the size of watermelons,
60
at you. Yeah. Now, what kind of strength?
Yeah, something that a normal man couldn't throw.
No, exactly. I mean, what kind of strength is that? I mean, that is crazy. But it's funny that the 3 of us do cryptozoology, basically.
Yeah.
And it's funny how we've gotten outside the box, because now, like, I am studying stuff from MUFON, about UFOs and stuff like that. Because, look at places like Skinwalker Ranch. They've got cryptozoology, they've got spirits, paranormal, and they have UFOs. So, I mean, you might be a cryptozoologist, but now you got to expand your horizons, and I've got to learn more. And Jay was saying the same thing.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. Wayne, you're like, your location in Tennessee, you said you're close to Virginia and you're close to Georgia, right?
Well, North Carolina.
Okay. North Carolina, that's right. And I'm sure you've done research in all 3 states, probably, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where's the most active area you've researched out of the 3 of those states? I've been interested to ask you that.
Well, the one place that I had my sighting was in North Georgia.
Okay.
the area where we hold our camp out and where I was this past weekend, where I've gotten probably as much activity, is right there on the line of all three, but it's technically on the Tennessee side. But like I said, throw a rock into Georgia, pea into North Carolina.
Right.
That's how close
Yeah.
to the corner that this place is.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a great question. I would say North Georgia probably has a lot of activity, has had the most activity, but I've never done any expeditions in Alabama, but it's coming because a lot of people are talking about stuff that's going on down there. One of my buddies that went on this last expedition with me does some work, or has done some work for the BFRO, has covered a couple of things for them. And I was supposed to go down with him to a place in Alabama, and I can't talk a lot about it because it's an ongoing investigation with those guys. But the stuff that they've got going on down there in pretty close to central Alabama is pretty mind-blowing. So Alabama is a place that I would like to get into. But to answer your question, North Georgia and Tennessee, Southeast Tennessee are really, really close.
Yeah.
In activity.
Wayne, being that you're from Tennessee, the big question everybody always asks me the same thing, but I got to ask you, you ever been down to the land between the lakes and investigate that area?
We got an expedition scheduled, or we are scheduling one right now. That's a creepy place, ain't it, man?
Oh my God, yeah. I was there with D.A. Roberts last year, and I'm going to tell you, as soon as we entered the park, you know, from the outer road into the park, the canopy is so thick that it's dark, and you feel oppressed. You can feel all the oppression over there, that it doesn't want you there. No, we can't hear any wildlife. We saw no rabbits, no squirrels, no deer, nothing like that.
That's abnormal. You know,
I mean, it was weird. The only thing we did see was bugs at night because it was hot.
Sure.
You know, it was in August. It was super hot, and we're there at nighttime. And as soon as you flick on a light, that's it. You get mobbed. But my God, that place, it just feels so oppressive. And
It's
same thing with Tennessee.
It's on my bucket list, man. At LBL, we're going to get up there, and it's going to happen in 23. Talking to another group up in Kentucky that we might converge and do like a big expedition inside there, because that place especially, I feel like there's safety in numbers.
Keep in touch with us, because let me know when you do go. D.A. Roberts and I are going to go. If I can get Jay to come, I would love to have him come with me on this.
That would be awesome. We could put a big expedition together. Yeah.
Meet up on that. And yeah, safety in numbers is correct.
That'd be a phenomenal investigation right there.
I'm going to tell you, it really would be.
That'd be phenomenal.
Yeah, something maybe we could schedule at least a few days, maybe not an overnight thing by any means, but 3 or 4 nights would be cool.
That'd be great. Yeah. No, it's that border is what, Kentucky and Tennessee?
Pretty close, yeah. It's in Kentucky.
It's okay.
Yeah, the LBL goes to both of them, and yeah, no matter where you go.
Does it run between both of them, Nick?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
That's why they call it the land between the lakes. It's Kentucky and Tennessee, and one goes right into the next. And one is more Sasquatch and one is more Dogman.
That's what I've heard. The Kentucky side is known for the Dogman, right? And then, or is it the opposite?
No, that's where the Dogman is mostly.
Is on the Kentucky side.
Nick, what do you think about the family that was supposedly killed back in the 80s? You've heard that story, haven't you?
I've been down there to interview people that they're not survivors of it or from the time. I don't mean from the incident, but from the time. Yeah. And I actually got to talk to the lady whose mother owned like a little breakfast luncheonette type place. And that's where the 2 of the sheriff's officers went the morning of that massacre when they found it. I mean, those guys were working it throughout the night, and they would go to this little luncheonette every morning, before they started their shift. like 6 o'clock in the morning. On this one morning, they went there like 5, and she was just opening up. Now, the lady who owned the place, she passed away, but her daughter is older and she's still alive. And she didn't want to really talk about it, but I did get to talk to her. And I did get to talk to this one gentleman whose uncle was one of the sheriff's officers that was there. And I believe that did happen. I mean, why would these people want to make it up? They didn't want to go. They wouldn't let me record either video or audio, but they would talk to me.
That says something.
It
So
does.
it's like,
Yeah.
and I'm going to tell you something. In Kentucky, Tennessee's so much better. You guys are so much nicer and open. Kentucky, they didn't want to talk about Dogman one bit.
We're volunteers, baby.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Tennessee volunteers, they'll do it. But in Kentucky, nobody wanted to talk. 2 hunters were across the street from where I was staying, and I went over to get gasoline, and I was talking to them about their hunting gear and what they go out there with, and they had bow and arrow, but I noticed that they both were strapped with 44 mags on their leg.
Smart.
And I asked them why. They go, well, there's some strange things out there. And they told me, I told them what I was doing and who I was. And they told me that they would recommend I don't go there at night. And I looked at them, I said, that's the only time I go out there is at night, really. I mean, when is something going to happen? In the day? No. I don't know about you, Wayne, but my idea from my research and from my experience in it is that Dogman and Sasquatch and cryptids, they kind of sleep during the daytime. That's when they rest. It's at nighttime when they're hunting. And
you hear about encounters that happen in the daytime, obviously, but the more activity seems to be at night. And something that you spoke to, Nick, when you went to the LBL, you talked about no wildlife, not having any activity. That's something I forgot to mention. That was really, really strange about this last expedition that we went on this past weekend. Something that we noticed. We got there Saturday around noon, and we set up, and it didn't take us long before we realized there was no wildlife. There was no signs, no sounds. We didn't hear birds. We didn't hear squirrels scampering. And we were in this valley right between 2 ridges. And you would think you would see some squirrels coming down those ridges. And there was no sounds, no bugs, nothing. And night went on. We heard this really, really weird metallic clanking sound like a tin can. Not 10 minutes after we got there, and we all 3 just shut up and looked at each other like, what was that? There's nothing around here that should have made that kind of sound.
Right.
And then it wasn't an hour later, we got a couple hours later, we got those 4 whoops. And during this whole time, we know there's no sound. There's no wildlife sound. We go, it starts raining about 7 o'clock, and it's like everything stopped. So that sucked. I mean, we couldn't hear anything. It was a wet night. It took a turn for the worse. But the next morning we got up, we rode in town, got some breakfast, and came back, and we noticed the wildlife was there. Everything it's like the forest came alive.
Yeah.
Now at nighttime, there was nothing.
At nighttime, you would usually hear crickets, cicadas, or something like that. But when you've got that apex predator out there, the Dogman or a large, group of Sasquatch, everything just dies. The only thing that we did find was the mosquitoes were out there and moths. They're still hanging around, but no cicada, no crickets, no squirrels, rabbits, nothing. And DA and I did go back during the daytime. And once again, we didn't see any squirrels or rabbits or deer either during the daytime in this section of LBL. It was really, really weird. And did you, you haven't been there yet.
No.
But when you do go there, I just would like you to just remember, just to see if you feel anything, because the oppression is there. It just
attention in the air.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels so depressive and oppressive.
Yeah,
it's like it's crushing down on you. It's like, leave, get out of here. We don't need you here.
Yeah, I felt that feeling before, Nick, but I know what you're talking about.
It's a very uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
Very, very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's like, you go to different areas and you feel a different level of that tension too. Some areas, well, right up here where we work, our areas we work, one of them is very, very welcoming, very pleasant, the group of Sasquatch. But then we have other areas where you can cut that tension in the air with a knife, so it's different. Up here where we go, it just depends on where the spot. I don't know if it's got to do with the particular group, the type, or what, but something is affecting that level of tension,
Yeah.
Now you're in the Adirondacks, right, Jeremiah?
Sure. Yeah.
Where are you at, Nick?
I'm in New Jersey, Central Jersey,
Okay.
but I have the latitude to be able to travel, and I've been throughout the country, searching stuff down, and actually went over the Mexican border over a decade ago in search of chupacabra.
Wow.
And I was going to mention that, just like there's 7 different types of Dogman, I think there's like what, 11 different types of Sasquatch out there.
So people say different things, but I would say pretty damn close.
Yeah, and one of the things I found, because I have a cousin-in-law, it's an Algonquin Indian from the First Nations people in Canada. My cousin married one when First Nations person, and when they were going to college, they met in Michigan. Anyway, I've been up there, and he's an Algonquin Indian, and like in Alberta, they talk about the Gugway, the face eater type of Bigfoot, and at least they'll talk about it. Now Jay, you'll probably be able to talk to Native Americans here, but Wayne, they will not talk to me. They will not give me information. I really tried. I tried, and they do not want to give me. Now, Jay, he would be able to, because being part Mohawk. But boy, but in Canada, the First Nations people are all for it. They'll talk to you about it.
It's very.
I can't understand why, but it's something. But they do not like the Gugway. Oh my God, the stories they've told me about that.
I've never heard anything pleasant about those guys.
They're called the face eaters. They'll bite your head off or something, or rip it off.
Yeah.
They've got that very uncomfortable look too. I mean, almost like a big baboon.
Yeah, the big sharp teeth, giant,
that
mouth.
Itself is just very unpleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very unpleasant.
So you guys think that there are different types of Sasquatch?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, look, just like there's different types of human beings. People look different. And come in all shapes and sizes. I would suppose that you would have that.
I agree. I mean, you listen to people out the Pacific Northwest, you hear more of the patty type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big and the docile and stuff like that. Down in Florida, the skunk ape, and in Texas especially, they seem to be more aggressive and a little bit smaller. From what I hear. So I definitely think that there are different types in the different parts of the country. But what I think is really, really cool is you get reports of the same type of activity everywhere.
Yes.
You see the same tree structures, you get the same sounds, the same vocalizations and stuff all across the country, but you have different types.
Right.
Yeah, which in a way that would make sense. When you do look at the great apes, okay, gorillas, bonobos, chimpanzees. Now they're all different species, right? But they do all share, like you were saying, Wayne. The great apes still throw rocks at you. Even monkeys, So they'll throw rocks at you, bend limbs. So it would make sense, even if there are, which I believe we just, we talked about that a second ago, different types of these things. It would make sense that if they're if they're the same species, just a different, they would share,
I could show you a picture of a tree structure in California and tell you it happened in Kentucky, and you couldn't tell me any different.
Exactly.
Yeah, because they do the same type stuff. The X formations, the tree breaks, and teepees, and stuff like that. You're finding that stuff everywhere, and that's what I find fascinating.
And they have the same thing in Australia. They call it the Yowie.
Yowie.
And it does the same thing there. Now that's kind of weird, right, guys?
Yes.
And look in the Himalayas. we're talking about back in the 1920s when they talked about the Yeti, the abominable snowman. I mean, it looks the same, except it has white fur, I guess to blend in with the snow and everything up there, and thicker fur because it is super cold up there. But my God, guys, it does the same thing. Whether Australia, United States, or the Himalayas for that matter.
Indonesia, you got the orang pendek and orangutan. They're doing the same type of thing.
Nick, it's funny that you brought up the Yeti up in the Himalayas and stuff, because the movie that I appear in on Tubi is called Battle of the Beast: Bigfoot versus Yeti, and it's kind of a playful hypothetical thing. There you go. That's cool. Like a hypothetical thing, like what would happen if the two were to meet and get
Battle of the Beast.
Battle of the Beast: Bigfoot versus Yeti. And it's on Tubi.
Okay.
It's only on Tubi, which is owned by Fox, the streaming network that's owned by Fox, but it's free. Anybody can go in there and watch it. But I'm on there with Dr. Jeff Meldrum, with Cliff Brackman, with several other people that you've heard of in the industry. It's the first movie I've been a part of, and it was really cool. But that's what we talked about, or a lot of people talked about in that, was the similarities between Bigfoot and Yeti. And I'm thinking the whole time it's the same thing. They're the same. They're the same creature, just in different parts of the world.
It's interesting, boy, guys. That's an hour. This has flown by.
It always does when you're having fun, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Wayne, we'd love to have you back, man. We didn't get you for very long tonight, so if you want to come back at some point, we'd be more than happy to have you.
I need to get you guys on Paranormal Odyssey too, because I want to do a really, really informative, in-depth show on Dogman.
Okay.
I've done them in the past with my other show. I've done shows on Dogman, but I want to do a deep dive into the topic and just spend some time digging in. And it seemed like you guys could be pretty good for that. So I'd love to have you
you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone you want to throw a shout out to while you're on here?
Well, check out the show, Paranormal Odyssey. You can find me everywhere that you get podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, Google, all that good stuff. Also, the YouTube channel, Paranormal Odyssey Live. You can find us live every Friday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And my group, Animal Research, on Facebook. If you'd like to become a member, we'd like to have you.
Awesome. I know I'm a member, and it's a great group. Great group. You're very, very welcoming group, and it's a great group of people. So, but everyone, that was great. And like I said, Wayne, we'd love to have you back on. And can you give me the name of the movie again? I'm gonna watch it tonight.
Battle of the Beasts. Bigfoot, Battle of the Beast, Bigfoot versus Yeti. I'll send you the picture when we get done, Jeremiah.
Very cool. I appreciate it, Wayne.
Yeah, we touched on a lot of things tonight, guys.
We did in that short hour. We did, yeah.
And it's a really good talk.
It's something that all three of us kind of got the same idea. That you're doing cryptozoology, like I mentioned before, but there's more to it than just that.
Yes.
And there's questions upon questions. We get one answer, we got 50 more questions on top of it.
Absolutely.
But great to have you there, Wayne. Excellent.
Thank you, bud.
Yeah, it was awesome having you, Wayne. Thanks a lot. And everyone have a great evening, and we'll see you next week.